Alright, good morning guys. So we are going to start off today by drawing a very simple room in 1-point perspective. So we've already learned how to draw boxes and cubes and letters in 1-point perspective. So now we're going to take it the next step further by drawing, instead of the outside of a cube, we're going to draw the interior spaces of a cube. If you think about a room, it's simply like you've taken the front face of the cube off and you've stepped inside of it. So we're going to be looking at the back wall or the back face and have the two side walls and the ceiling and floor. So it's going to be like we're inside of a giant box. So in your sketchbook on a new piece of paper, open it up and turn your paper horizontally. You can write your name on the back if you would like. And to start off with, what we're going to do is create somewhere here within the middle of this piece of paper, we're going to make a box that is about 4 inches wide and 3 inches tall. It doesn't have to be exactly that size, but that just sort of gives you a good kind of guesstimate. But we want it to be located about in the middle of that whole page. So there is 4 inches wide, making sure that line is nice and horizontal. About 3 inches tall on both sides, nice and vertical lines. And if you've done that correctly, it should match up to be 4 inches wide on the bottom. Now what this box is going to represent is that back wall in a room. So now we're going to determine where our vanishing point is, and we will be omitting the horizon line just because we don't have to have that for this picture. So if you remember, the horizon line does represent your eye level. Anything above your eye level you see the bottom of, anything below you see the top of. If I were sitting in a room, my eye level might be about here somewhere. And then for my vanishing point, that determines how far left or right you are. If I'm sitting on the right side of the classroom looking forward, it might be way over here. If I'm in the middle of the room, or if I'm way over here on the left side. So since we're creating a make-believe room, I'm just going to sort of pick a random spot, let's say about here, to make that my vanishing point. But it does need to be contained inside of this square. Now, from that vanishing point, we're going to create the walls and the ceiling and floor now. So I'm going to take the corners of my square and line them up with my vanishing point. Here to here. And from this corner, I'm going to draw my line outward and away from my vanishing point and take it all the way off the page. Like that. Now for the next corner, if I line it up with the vanishing point's here. I'm not going to draw a line. There's the corner. And then from the corner out, I'm going to draw that vanishing point, that diminishing line. Third corner, vanishing point, corner, line all the way out, and fourth corner. Now, notice how we can tell, because my vanishing point is not right in the center, I put it off to the left a little bit. You can tell by looking at this, the left wall looks a little bit more skewed and a little bit more foreshortened than the right wall. The right wall looks a little bit more normal. But that's a basic setup for an interior room space. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to create things that lay flat against a wall. We're going to create a window and some picture frames and some basic things like that, a doorway. So we're going to do this together. You can pause this video and rewind until you feel like you've gotten this, and you can build your drawing up with me as we go. So I'm going to start on this back wall by creating a window. Since the back wall, notice, is made up of vertical and horizontal lines only, my window is going to be the same type of line work. It is not foreshortened. Everything we're seeing is flat and straight on. So I'm going to create, windows are usually pretty tall. going to create a nice little opening rectangle for my window using only vertical and horizontal lines. And have a nice big window in my house. Like that. Now, we can get a little bit fancier. We can add a few more details. We can add some molding around the window. I can create a little border to have some molding and make it just a little bit wider. Like that. Then inside the window I can create window panes for it. I'm going to do just a standard window that has a little half bottom section that will slide up to open the window. So I'm going to create one line horizontally across and drop down and do, that's a little bit high. Maybe I should move that down a little bit. Make it about here, there, and then I'm going to do another line just to give it some thickness so it's got some depth. I can create like the little window turn thing on the top, and that's a very, very basic window. You could, if you wanted to, put the little window panes in there, but we'll leave it like that for now. So that's a window that's laying flat against the wall on the back. But now let's figure out, how would we draw a window on one of the side walls where it's foreshortened? So in order to do that, what we're going to do is, to keep this window consistent, you obviously don't want one window really small in your house and one really big. I'm going to very, very lightly take the top of my window and super lightly bring it across to the corner of the wall. I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom, very lightly, and the same thing for the crossbar of my window. Now, when these lines, when we bring them across horizontally, when they hit this corner and they turn and start moving up this wall, they will become like the top and the bottom edge. They'll become diminishing lines. So if I line up the top edge where it hits the corner, line it up with my vanishing point, I can bring this out and forward. And so you can see how it feels like that line turns and follows up the wall. If I do this with each of them, vanishing point, corner, up and out, vanishing point, corner, up and out, that's helping me maintain the same size consistently throughout the room. So now I'm going to decide where I'd like to have my second window, and I think I might put him, I don't know, way up here towards the front. So I'm going to drop in a nice vertical line, and you can see how much bigger this window looks compared to that one. But it's because this one is so much closer to us, its perspective makes it bigger the closer it is to us. And since it's on a foreshortened wall, I'm going to keep it narrower than this window by just a little bit, so it gives the appearance of it being foreshortened. Then I'll darken these lines. At the top and bottom. Now I took these lines from the outside of the frame of this back window. So now what I'm going to do is create the interior portion as well. So I'm going to start with my vertical lines, and I'm not going to take it all the way down. I'm going to leave a little gap. Then the bottom of these windows, those lines are now diminishing. They're no longer horizontal. So I'm going to change the direction and make those diminishing. diminishing, diminishing, and vertical. So now that has the little frame of this window made. I can then create the middle bar, and since it's on a tilted wall now, it will now be diminishing as well. So there's the top line coming from the vanishing point. There's the bottom line coming from the vanishing point. But this time, if I'm going to find in the middle and put that like little knob, I kind of need to figure out where that is on this. If I put it right in the very center with the equal width on the left and the right, because this window is tilted, that's technically not the center. So, in linear perspective, there's a very important rule on how you find the middle of any plane that's foreshortened and is going to a vanishing point. And that rule is if you take the corners, the opposite corners of a plane, and crisscross them, and then crisscross the other two opposite corners, that will find the exact center of that plane. So I'm going to match up this corner with this one, and I'm just going to very, very lightly put in a little cross mark in the middle. Then I'll match up this corner with this one, and very lightly put a little crossbar in the middle. I don't take it all the way to the corners just because that's a lot to erase later. But where those two lines meet, that X shape in the middle, that tells me the exact center of that whole plane. So right above that point is where the middle will be for me to create my little knob to open my window. That's going to be a really important thing when it comes to drawing our library linear perspective drawing from observation as our major project for this unit. So now we have a window on a back wall that's not foreshortened and a window on a side wall that is foreshortened. So now we're going to move over and we're going to create a doorway on this other wall. So perhaps this doorway will open up into another sort of adjoining room in this house. So I'm going to create, we'll put it back here towards the back, a nice true vertical for the back edge of the door, and I'm going to bring it all the way down to the floor and determine how tall I want that doorway to be. Now since it's on a wall that's diminishing or foreshortened to the vanishing point, I'm going to line this top edge up with my vanishing point here, and I'm going to extend it forward to make the width of the door. I'm going to decide how wide I want it to be and then drop down a vertical, and again I'm always comparing it to the edge of my paper to make sure my verticals are true, and that's going to be the other side of that doorway. Now we can make this look a little bit fancier. We can add a frame around it the same way we did with our windows. So I can create another vertical line at the top. I can create another diminishing line that's coming from my vanishing point, and another one. Now notice I'm going to make this front edge a little bit wider than the back edge because this is closer to us. By just a hair, I'm going to make it a smidge wider, and that will give the illusion that this is closer and bigger and that is further and smaller. So that's a doorway sort of framed in. But now what we can do is give the illusion that this opens up into another room. If this were a closed door, I would just add a door handle and be done. But since this is going to open up into another room, I'm going to erase the floor line right in between those door posts. So that way the floor will then continue as it moves over into that other room. Now, as of right now, what I have is a paper thin wall. If you notice, there's no thickness to it. So I want to give this some depth. So if this wall is going to come and then turn and have a thickness, sort of like the thickness of a door jamb, when it makes that turn, it will become, again, a horizontal line, just like the back wall. So I'm going to find a nice true horizontal, comparing it to the edge of my paper and that back floor wall there. And at the bottom of the door, I'm going to make a little short horizontal line for the thickness. And then I'm going to slide up to this top corner as well and make another little horizontal line for the thickness. If I drop in a vertical connecting them, I now have a nice thickness to that wall, so it's not paper thin. That way it's got room for all of the insulation and all the 2x4s and all that stuff that builds up to create a wall. Now, what we should have at this door jamb is we should be able to see the underside of that part there. So I'm going to line my vanishing point up with this little corner. And I'm going to fill it in from that corner up until it disappears. And now we have a completed door jamb. We can see the interior wall and the interior ceiling part. Once we have that, we should then technically be able to see the other room. So if these two rooms are lined up in space, one room right next to another, we should be able to see the back wall of this room through that doorway. So what I'm going to do is take this bottom line for my back wall, line it up again, and then fill this in my doorway. That creates the illusion that that back wall continues into the next room. Now, depending on how tall your doorway is, we're going to do the same thing for the ceiling. I'm going to line up my ceiling, top horizontal line, and if the doorway doesn't block it, you might be able to see that top line continuing into the other room as well. And I think that gives it a really nice sort of three-dimensional quality. So that's a way that you can draw a lot of things that lay flat against the wall in a room like this. You can add paintings. So I'll let you choose. You can put a painting right here, or I've left some space here. Let's see. Let's make a little frame. Let's put a poster on the wall. This wall will have a vertical. The top and bottom will diminish from the vanishing point. Bottom and top. And then it'll be cut off in the front with a vertical. I could add a frame around that. I could take the time to turn that into a nice little scene. I can draw some mountains. I don't know, maybe some clouds. Maybe this is a pretty landscape on the wall. Maybe there's a nice like little river flowing. And then I have a cool little poster. But the rule is that the top and bottom of anything on a foreshortened wall, the top and the bottom has to go to the vanishing point. A lot of times I see students that will just start making random lines that are tilted in different directions, trying to draw what they think looks correct. But remember, in one-point perspective, you only have 3 types of lines. You are going to have vertical to represent height, horizontal to represent width,